Hello and welcome to Fixed, the podcast by the Fix Media where we unpack media insight and take you behind the scenes of editorial decision, strategy, and innovation in the industry. I'm Worship and I will be your host today. Before we dive in, subscribe, follow, and if you like what you hear, support us at the Fix.media. Happy to welcome Marcela Kunova, Managing Director at Journalism UK, with whom we're going to talk about diversity in the media. We already had Marcela as a guest, so I think that it's not necessary to introduce her separately because we already have you on board, as Fix said. But again, thank you for joining us for one more episode.
Glad to be back.
Let's go for it. So you run journalism.uk, and from your perspective, what does diversity in the media actually mean in a day-to-day newsroom practice?
To me, it's the plurality of voices. It's not just who we are listening to, but who we are not listening to. It's not just the voices we do include, but also those that we exclude. And really paying attention how close our organizations reflect the audience we intend to serve. And if we want to reach people, we need to sound and look like the people we are trying to reach. Excluding half a planet is a bad business strategy and it's bad journalism.
Talking about ownership, and especially about female ownership in and leadership in media, like why is it matter especially now, and how can it reshape the editorial priorities, workplace culture, if it reshaping it at all?
I think there's several problems, there's several barriers for women. I think one is a kind of pipeline problem where you will get to leadership when you get promoted. And to get promoted, you don't just need training or a mentor, you need sponsors. You need people who advocate for you, who open you the doors, and who kind of help you on the way up because they believe in you. And women, and we know that, are less likely to have sponsors, especially in bigger company and corporations. The sponsors tend to form around affinity, and men in senior positions are often more likely to sponsor other men. There is no one says a man cannot sponsor a woman, but we know it's less frequent. And the other problem is the obvious, the work-life balance. Women are much more likely to be picking up chores, childcare, and all the extra work activity that make them less available. And in terms of ownership, one of the major problems is simple access to capital and to networks for buying or funding media businesses. We know that from all startups funded in the past years, women get only 2% of funding. And it's much harder for women to raise funding. There is a structural barrier in that. And certainly there is part of bias of what a leader look like. A really interesting example of Lara Irving Jordan, for example, and I mean we are getting out of Europe, but she said she was a senior leader woman in her newsroom. The second she got engaged, she lost all authority because everyone assumed she will go home, marry, have a baby, and they won't see her ever again, which obviously wasn't the reality. But sometimes these expectations are still there, and some of those cultural biases persist.
Reflecting on this, you already brought up one of these examples, but what do you think? What advantages or pressures come with being a woman in charge of a media organization?
Sometimes when you look at newsrooms, it really looks like people think it's 1960s and everyone's got a housewife at home. We don't. Lots of this male success has been built on women's unpaid work at home. These guys were available because women were home cooking dinner and taking care of kids. This is no more the case. Women work and there is no one at home cooking and taking care of kids, or both parents, hopefully. But this sort of this unpaid infrastructure that was allowing men to be free to build their career, that is, well, it's just not there anymore, at least for most people. And workplaces didn't adapt. They still work kind of 9 to 5, like, well, who picks up a kid at 3? Someone, right? And I think we are still catching up. And you know, someone told me that the other day, when they got back from maternity leave, the boss asked them, "Do you want to be seen as a mom or as a foreign correspondent?" And the dichotomy is still there. And I'm like, what's the difference? I mean, and I don't want to go on air and talk about my kid, but I do have a child the same way as the foreign correspondent guy has a child. And absolutely no one gives him any shit about it. So why are women always, made feel self-conscious or guilty or ashamed of, having children and being professional? To me, those things are not a contradiction, and it is job of the workplace to just start to treat it as a completely normal thing. People work and have children, and those two things go together, rather than forcing, well, men and women, to oppose that. And I have to say, for the childcare and sort of parental issue, that bias is much stronger with men. And it's not just in the media industry. I knew of young man in legal profession who was about to become a partner, and he wanted 6 months maternity leave, paternity leave. And his manager told him, "Don't be ridiculous. You can't have 6 months paternity leave. You won't get a partnership. That, what are you thinking?" And I was like, "Well, I want to stay home with the baby." And the pressure on the man was probably even worse than it would be on a woman. So the workplaces definitely have a massive structural problem, completely ignoring the reality in which they operate.
Yes, I think especially since the COVID and the quarantine, I think people are realizing more and more how this whole concept of how we work now and how we attend work is absolutely not aligned with normal life. What do you think when we are talking about like moving into this management or ownership position? What skills or experiences matter the most, and what are something that women can do to advocate for themselves as well?
Well, there are two things. So when it comes to how an individual woman should can pursue her career, I mean, one thing is obviously skills. The world, I mean, journalism industry is going through a massive disruption, regardless of gender, and we can't really even predict what roles or what jobs will be around in the next 1 or 2 years, regardless of gender. So looking at the models, looking at the trends, try to get ahead, and raise your hand. So often when I speak with women, I also mentor some of the junior women in the media industry, and I so often hear, a version of, "I am being overlooked for promotions," and I'm like, "Well, do you raise your hand and say you want that promotion?" Well, no. Well, yes, you need to be if you ask, and this is sort of the kind of helpful mindset that can help women to advance. If you ask someone, not just, "Why am I being overlooked for a promotion?" but you can ask them, "I want to do X. I want to be a manager. I want to be a foreign correspondent. I want to be an editor. What do I need to do to get me there between now and next year?" And get your managers to help you to develop those skills, or to meet the right people, or whatever you need to kind of get you there. Because if you don't have that goal, you will not get there. We have to stop behave like Cinderellas and believe that if we are beautiful and kind, a prince will come and sweep us off our feet and take us to the palace. They won't. You need to kind of get to the palace on your own. and, and hopefully know where that palace is and get a map. And then it's fine. And then you can meet the prince all you want. But there is loads of women have been, I think, often taught to just be good and work hard, and that success, that promotion will come. The truth is, it won't. Probably irrespective of gender, but more so for women.
Like in the episode, sounds like we're a great match, and we couldn't be happier. If you'd like to strengthen our bond, support us by donating or joining our membership program. That's it. No more interruptions. Back to the episode.
Let's talk now a little bit about the audience and the audience expectations. Do you think that this is changing when it comes to representation in media leadership and newsrooms? Or do readers or subscribers actually care? Or should they care? Or like, how do you see this?
This is an interesting one. I would like to give you a clear answer. I'm not sure there is a clear answer. So I would say a bit of both. Let me break it down. When it comes to younger audiences, perhaps more liberal leaning audiences, when people value diversity or have positive opinion about gender parity, they do care. They do want to see women writer, they want to see women on screen, they will follow women creators, and that value is kind of in their ecosystem. So yes, they all care. We see other audiences who are perhaps more conservative leaning, where the opinion of women in workplace are not necessarily positive, and having women in senior or position of visibility might backfire. And we see that in the end of the day, I think media organizations are up to a point mirror of their audience and an audience they are targeting. Can we change it? I think absolutely yes. One of the I'm thinking about something like Fox News, for example, where you're talking to more conservative leaning audience, and the way women were treated on screen was very particular. Is that the kind of right approach to get women into more visibility or on screen position? I'm not even talking about the abuse that was going on in background, but you need we need to see your legs and have your big cleavage and whatnot, so you can be on screen because that will get you views, etc. So I think we need to be very careful with how we want to elevate women into more visible or senior positions, and then do audiences care? I think people notice. They notice either way. The question is, what your audience value and how scared are you of losing more conservative audience if you have clever women who are doing their job really well and people see it.
And let's talk a little bit also about the newsroom in general and the leadership, because also when we are talking about women as leaders, there is this big conversation going on that how better it would be everything if we would have more women in leadership. So what do you think? Have you noticed any differences in how newsrooms with women in senior leadership approach coverage, talent development, audience engagement? So basically, how they lead. Do you see any differences?
I don't think there are any hard coded differences between men and women. I have met the most attentive, caring men and the most horrible, aggressive women. I don't think gender automatically results in one type of behavior or another. Having diversity in leadership helps you bring voices in a room that you didn't think about. Not because you're a horrible person, but simple because it's just not on your radar. Women, by and large, seem to be much more understanding of things like flexible working or family friendly policy. Maybe they pay more, they have broader definition of what's newsworthy, just because in their network, the topics discussed is not just the latest, what I know, Putin, Trump fallout, but there are other things that can be maybe more down to earth as priority for people. And again, I think loads of it comes to simply who's in your network and what voices you are listening to. And there was there was a number of studies of male voices and male experts outnumbering women voices and women experts when they are quoted in articles by journalists, and various theories why that is. But very often it simply boils down to network. I need an expert on X. Who do I know? Well, I know this other guy because I know this guy who knows this guy who knows this guy. And women will often know other women by the same sort of networking strategy. So I think bringing in people with different networks, different perspectives, different lived experience helps you broaden the definition of what is newsworthy, and again, what stories will feature, what voices we are going to listen to, and from that perspective, women are more than half, world population. It's not a minority audience, so neglecting those voices and neglecting those stories is just a very short-sighted and honestly just bad business strategy. I think at this point, no one can think that only guys are reading news. And again, I think having women in leadership position is also important for junior staff, because, as we say, you can't be what you can't see. And if junior women do not see women in senior positions, one, the aspirations might be affected, and then second thing is the sponsors. You need people who open you the door. That's how the guys get to the top. There is no such thing as self-made man. There is always a network that kind of pulls together, and I think women need to do the same.
What do you think? What role do investors and donors playing in this to make a newsroom or make a newsroom more diverse or shaping who ends up in leadership positions?
Certainly, I mean, donors and investors and funders can choose what ventures they put their money into. So if they are conscious of the importance of supporting women in media ownership and media sort of news production, they need to make a call of where to put their money. If to what extent should shareholders interfere in what media organization does? I think that's a broader topic. But if you say, I want to fund these women, I want there to be more women voices, more women's stories, more focus on issues that simply matters to help the humanity. That's where I put my money. And Indian and an audience too. I mean, you vote with your wallet. If you decide to pay for a newsletter of a woman creator, or subscribe to newspaper or news organizations that actively elevates women, you casted your vote.
Let's talk now also about what like independent outlets or smaller newsroom can do to work on diversity. What do you think? What they can realistically improve to be more diverse?
Well, one of the things is obviously collaborators. You will always be interviewing people, so go and proactively looking at women and women voices and women's stories. Um, you know, take us. We are a team of three. There is only so much diversity you can bring into three, and not every organization can have 20 people on a team to have a broader diversity. But we do have contributors. We ask people, what matters, what do you see, what don't we see. We have a community spotlight session where a number of experts from the industry will talk about issues that matter that we would have missed, not even because of the gender, but just three people can only think about so much. So definitely bring in your audience, bring in people, listen to them. What do they need? What are the pain points? What are their interests? And go and look for these stories and just listen more than you talk, I suppose. And that's probably a good audience strategy in general. But it's not because you are a man that you cannot listen to women voices. and just get more women in a network. One interesting thing you notice when you go to conferences is that very often the groups of kind of 2 and 3 that talk are sort of same gender, like guys talking to guys and women talking to women. um, just turn around and network with women, and connect with women experts. They are worth talking to and listen to, and yeah, I suppose just diversify voices you listen to, or at least the voices you know. Women are connected with men, listen to men, feature men. Clearly, gender does not prevent you from listening to or featuring people of the other gender, so it's probably the same for men.
Could you share some specific examples of some media organization that they are doing quite well on diversity or maybe doing quite poorly on diversity?
So you have organizations like the Financial Times that publish a transparent gender pay gap report. And they also have quite an active sponsorship of women mechanism in place. This is, what I was telling you, it's a women or senior leaders looking for young talent to bring up. A Swedish public broadcaster SVT has a leadership parity policy, and in terms of poorly, it it is a tough one, because I think those that do it poorly are organizations that either don't care at all or approach diversity in the tokenistic way, where let's appoint a woman, or like, let's stick a woman on board or something, but then let's not listen to them really, or make them feel really unwelcome, or objectifying them, or whatever that can be. True diversity is a mindset. It's not a project. It's the way you think. And generally, if you find lack of women, there are more things that are wrong with that organization. And lack of diversity generally reflects lack of open-mindedness about many things, and that will inevitably reflect on your bottom line and on your audience figures and just quality of journalism you produce. So get on it.
We are slowly finishing this conversation. I just have a couple of more questions. Like our audience is especially interested and focused on Europe and on what's happening in Europe. Are you seeing any meaningful differences between the UK, which already has its very own and particular media environment, and Europe? Do you see any sort of trends or something that especially is interesting for you when it comes to talking about diversity in media?
Well, I mean, it's common knowledge that Nordics often have gender parity in leadership, either as a policy or at least as a very strong mindset. In Southern Europe, we see slower progress, but we have some quite innovative startups that are led by women, especially when it comes in digital media or social first media, and in a creator economy. And we have EU funded diversity initiatives. There are really good cross border collaborations like Hostwriter. I'm not sure there are any massive differences between UK and the rest of the Europe. I mean, there are such there are great differences between European countries, as they are. UK probably somewhere in the middle. As I say, when people, when for people, by people I mean audience, if they value diversity and they want to see more diversity, and they live in a more sort of liberal environment, they will probably value it and demand it and push for it. If they fall into more of the conservative field, they will often push against it. I mean, we saw what happened in the US when President Trump started his second term. There was a massive pushback against DUI of any kind, and again, I think I'm all for scrapping policies that are inefficient, and that's where I'm talking about the kind of tokenistic approach, like, oh, let's just hire a diverse person because diversity, and there is no real structural change in the company, and the mindset doesn't change, and the culture doesn't change. Well, then of course it's not going to work. Why would it? So if you say, if it's not producing any positive results, let's stop it. I'm all for it. However, pushing against women in workplace, pushing against reproductive rights, pushing against freedom of women to simply choose what they want to do with their lives. Those are dangerous trends that we see on rise. I think, well, UK is kind of backdoor of the US when it comes to Europe. So we see these trends on the rise in the UK, and in some other European countries. And I watch that with lots of concern. I would ideally not want us to go back to, an unnecessary conservative approach to women in a workplace. I think Jean is out of the box. If someone dreams of women going back, baking bread and raising 12 kids, I don't think this is going to happen, in at least not in our lifetime, hopefully, in Europe. But we definitely need to be pushing back against these policies, and also just show why they are wrong. It's we are journalists. Our job is to inform people. So why, where are we? How are these trends allowed to spread? Where is the pushback, other than waving hands and saying, "Oh, this is wrong"? It's our job to go and tell those stories, to dig out the data, to to speak up, and just to make people aware that freedom that's eroding for one part of population will often mean freedom eroding for wider society.
All right, and one more question, and we'll be finishing this conversation. And this is a question to maybe be ending in a positive note, maybe. So, looking ahead, what would real progress on diversity and gender equality in media would look like? Let's say in like 5 years' time.
Mm-hmm. Certainly, better access to training, to funds for women to either start or acquire media organizations, much more solid sponsorship inside organizations, and also women raising their hand and asking for things they want and then they deserve. So, I don't think it's just the workplace problem or the women problem. Both sides need to realign, I think, into the reality, and we need to acknowledge that women do face more structural barriers than men in acceding to a position of leadership. And also, women have to acknowledge that they need to be more proactive in pursuing these opportunities rather than kind of waiting for system to fix itself, because it's everyone's job, not just women's job to fix the system, but it's our job too. We can't just kind of wait for it to fix itself, and then once everything is fixed, then we will get to the positions of leadership. That's not how it works. So I really truly encourage women to focus on what they want. There are so many things I wish I knew about, not just about news and news gathering, but about business, about leadership, about networking, about raising money, about how just business works. No one tells you these things. They were definitely not in journalism school. And this is where the sponsorship comes into place. So you need senior people who show you simply how the company is run. You can't imagine that, and we do need women to have much broader access to this knowledge, so they understand these opportunities and become vocal about where they want to go and what they need to get there.
Right, Marcela, thank you so much again for joining for this episode at Fixed.
Hope it's been useful.
Of course, of course. Thank you. To everyone listening, thanks for tuning into Fixed. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast, follow the Fix online, and yes, we're now also on TikTok. Want to support our work? Visit the Fix.media and explore our new membership program.